Opening my email, looks like Ford is sending us a Ford F-150 Lightning electric truck. It doesn't have a price on here because this is a VIP, employees and top-of-the-line testers only. But I was told the base Lightning with the smaller battery is around $43,000 base, and if you want the extended, larger battery, we'll talk about later, is around $53,000. Price is subject to change. These are just estimates. Or you get one loaded up with everything. Some platinum models like 90 grand. I'm sure you might have seen those on YouTube. Wide range of prices and a lot of options here. And like the way the EPA tries to do the miles per gallon electrics, they talk about fuzzy math. I'm not going to cover this. It's kind of silly. It says 10 out of 10 for a greenhouse rating, but of course you're plugging into an electric socket that's run by a coal plant. They're kind of fudging the numbers here. We'll talk about it a little bit later too. So let's get on and do the test and go out and look at the truck. Well, from a distance, it looks like any other Ford F-150. There are some telltale signs if you look up close. Yes, I know the truck is dirty. It's been raining every afternoon, so you wash it, it gets dirty again. So we're just going to test it dirty. And we have the Lightning emblem. Easy to see when it's been washed, so people know you spent the extra money for the EV F-150. And with an electric motor running the rear wheels and running the front wheels, this is technically a four-wheel drive, or all-wheel drive, whichever way you want to look at it. Either way, you get traction on all fours. There are two batteries you can get. The basic one gives you 230 miles of range, 452 horsepower, 98 kilowatts, 775 pounds-feet of torque. Then you have the extended range battery. It gives you 320 clean miles, bumps up the horsepower to 580, allows you to tow up to 10,000 pounds. I think the smaller battery is like 6,000 to 7,000 pounds. I'll have to look that up. 131 kilowatts. Performance-wise, the larger battery has a 0 to 60 time of just over 4 seconds. The smaller one around 5.5 seconds. We'll talk about that a little bit later. 0 to 60 times don't mean much in a truck. Neither is horsepower. It's torque that matters, and this thing has lots and lots of torque. You can feel it by the seat of your pants, as we'll see when we're driving. As we do in all our videos, we're going to take the headlights out in the dark and see how they perform and do some night driving. That's part 3 of the video, so stay tuned. Okay, let's go to the front. No, there's not a motor in there. A trunk called the frunk. Holds up to 400 pounds, 14 cubic feet. And more storage under here with the charging cable for these smaller 240 volt or 120 volt outlets. According to the spec sheet, there are 8 120 volt outlets for running appliances, 4 in the front trunk, 2 in the bed, 2 in the cab. If you upgrade, there's also a bunch of 240 volt outlets. Here's some of them in the back bed right here. And according to the brochure, if you have the 320 mile heavy duty battery system, you can plug this into your house and charge everything for 3 days to 10 days, depending on what you're running as far as appliances go. Of course, if you're running an air conditioner or a heater, that might drop a bit. They don't mention that. I haven't tried it. I'm sure on YouTube we'll have a lot of people doing that soon enough to find out the real numbers. Also, the tailgate is power operated, lowers automatically, and you have these little metric and non-metric measurements here for doing your plywood cutting and other chores. Oh yeah, I just looked it up. The tow rating for the smaller battery is 7,700 pounds compared to the 10,000 for the bigger battery. And on the gauge cluster, you have the information telling you how much juice you have left. And let's see, we have a drive mode function, normal, sport, off-road, and tow haul. I'll be driving in normal for most of the time, unless I'm really pushing the pedal down. I was going to say gas pedal, but we can't say that in an electric vehicle, can we? I don't know what off-road does. Got a very nice camera system here. Uh-oh, what's that mean? At least Ford just gave us some very simple climate controls. No need to go in the computer screen. Thank you very much. Keep it simple. That's the way to do it. And here's some of those power outlets we were talking about earlier. For the shifter, we get a stick. Takes up a lot of room, gets in the way. You would think a push button or a shift knob would be far better, but to deal with that, you can press this button. Now you put your laptop down, it does get in the way, but now you can't shift. And what happens if the motor breaks and it doesn't raise? So I think a push button would have been a better solution, but this is Ford's solution, and it presses your buddies when they see it. Now the negative side, there's a lot of shiny chrome in here, reflecting the sun on my eyes. I don't know why we have to have shiny chrome in motor vehicles, guys, but almost all manufacturers seem to be doing this. Get some sunglasses, I guess. Okay, enough show and tell. Let's go ahead and do some driving. Alright, power steering. You can tell this is an electric system. It has no feel, no feedback, very bland. Really can't sense what the wheels are doing, but most people who drive trucks don't really care about the steering feel, as long as it's responsive enough, and it is, so I don't think too many F-150 electric truck owners will be complaining. As we do in all our videos, taking some mild speed humps around 15 to 20 miles per hour. See how the suspension performs and impact. It seems to be a very smooth riding truck. I just went over some speed bumps, didn't feel them. Let's do 20 miles an hour. Bump number 1. Okay, pretty smooth. Impressive. Here comes number 2. Number 3. Still smooth, and the big one. Overall, pretty comfortable. On paper, 452 horsepower and a 0 to 60 time of 5.5 seconds. Doesn't really impress anybody, but again, horsepower doesn't mean anything truck, it's torque. With 775 foot-pounds, you can feel it right in the seat of your pants, and when you hit that throttle, it comes right off at idle. You better have your head on the headrest, or your neck's going to get snapped a bit. Got in the sport mode. You better have the traction control on too. You're going to be spinning the tires, something fierce. Whoa! Hang on. Hang on to that steering wheel. This thing's got guts. And this is the small battery. With the larger one, wow. Near 4 seconds. Nice brakes. Pedal's a little spongy, but most electric vehicles, you have to get used to that. Supposedly, this is the best handling Ford F-150 ever made. Let's take the turning circle. And our security people will be coming out throwing stuff at me. That's okay. That's what they get paid for. These tires are a bit on the skinny side. But traction's still pretty good. Needs some bigger rubber. Alright, we've established that the headlights and other lighting doesn't really kill the battery range, but what about the heater? I get emails all the time. The heater, doesn't the heater drain the battery? Well, I couldn't answer that before because I drove these in the summertime when it's 118 degrees outside, but tonight it's a cool 51 degrees. My entire driving, I had the heater on high, maximum. I had the heated seats on, high, maximum. The heated steering wheel on, high, maximum. Everything that has to do with heat was on full blast, which explains why I'm roasting alive in here, but it's for the cause, that's okay. So let's look at the numbers. I've driven 4 miles. I started with 199 miles on the range and dropped to 189 miles. So I lost 10 miles of range and 4 miles of driving using the heater. So yes, the heater can drain the battery if you have it turned up all the way. So if you're driving in Alaska where it's freezing, you're going to lose some range. What's interesting, there are gobs and gobs of reviews on YouTube and the automotive publications, and nobody, zero, seems to talk about this. Are you glad to watch my video? If you hadn't watched my video, you would know this. Using heat does drain the battery, yes. Now we know. Alright, if you were alarmed by part 1 of the heater test, where we had the temperature at max 90 degrees and the heated seats on max and the heated steering wheel on, it didn't do very good. But we got some good news. We just took a second drive with the heater on. This time we kept it a little more sane. The temperature for the heater was 78 degrees. The heated seats were on low. Didn't have the heated steering wheel on. And let's look at the results. We drove 13.4 miles. And for my full charge that said 243 miles, I used 13 miles of range. So basically, the heater did not affect the mileage at all when used moderately. So that settles the argument. Yes, if you turn the heat up crazy, you can drain the battery, but in normal use, reasonable temperature, you really don't have anything to worry about, based on my test here anyway. There are 3 basic ways to charge this truck. Number 1, you can plug it into a typical 120 volt household outlet, but it's going to take several days to get a full charge. It's for emergency use only. Overnight, I'm told you might get 15-20 miles, enough to get home. Number 2, the most common way is to hook up a charger in your garage, which is a 240 volt system. Usually you get about 20 miles of range for every hour, charging overnight 8 to 12 hours, depending on the small battery or big battery and weather. There's also a bunch of 240 volt chargers in your town, probably like shopping malls or bookstores, grocery stores, where you go in, do your shopping, come back. About an hour, you get about 15 to 20 miles of top-up charge. If you're traveling on the highways, you'll need to find yourself a supercharger. That's number 3 choice. Most of those are 150 kilowatts, and some are pretty quick. You can charge it up 4 miles per minute. Some are a bit slower, 1 mile per minute, depending on who makes the charger, how old it is, and the weather. I've had 150 kilowatts that charge in 45 minutes. I've had some that take an hour and a half or so. It just varies. So the numbers I'm giving this video, the times, it's open to flexibility. You'll send me an email saying, well, your time's off, I charge twice as quick or twice as slow. These are just estimates in my video. And there are also 350 kilowatt chargers that are super quick, very hard to find. And there's 50 watt chargers designed for smaller vehicles with smaller batteries. I'm told it takes like 4 or 5 hours to use a 50 kilowatt in this truck, but I haven't tried it yet. Maybe I'll be using 150 kilowatts. And by the way, those superchargers are not cheap, as you will find out as we go further in this video. In fact, they're very expensive to use. You might want to be charging yours at home as often as possible. We're here at the public charging station, and there are 3 types of chargers you're likely to find. The 350 kilowatt, which gives you like 3 miles per minute, at least on this vehicle. And the 150 kilowatt gives you like 1 mile per minute of charging. And 50 kilowatt, well, forget that. And they're not cheap. Yesterday I got 110 miles in 40 minutes for 25 bucks. 25 bucks, I could buy 7 gallons of gas, and a gasoline F-150 can give you about 150 miles on the freeway, or 170 if you're getting 21, 22 miles to the gallon. So let's do some math here. Let's say we took a 3,000 mile trip in a gasoline powered F-150. That'd be about 45 to 50 hours of driving, 10 stops, 1 per 300 miles, about 5 to 10 minutes to fill the tank. So out of your 50 hours of driving, you'd be stopping, say, an hour and a half for fuels. You've made the trip with the F-150 Lightning with the extended range battery, over 300 miles of range. That would be 10 stops, around an hour to 15, hour and a half apiece. That'd be 15 hours of stopping for 50 hours of driving. And if you had 150 kilowatt chargers the whole trip, that'd be around 31 hours of stopping for your 50-hour trip, versus going back to the gasoline truck about an hour and a half. I think I got that math right. If I didn't, you make comments in the comment section. Plus, you have to find chargers that work. And on average, I have to go through 2 or 3 chargers a day to find one that works. Today, the one next door there didn't work. Worked yesterday, but not today. So I had to wait in line for this dude to get done and use this one. I had to wait a half an hour. So I have to make that into consideration too. The point I'm making, if you're staying close to home, within 100, 200 miles, you're okay. If you're taking long distance trips, it's going to take a lot of your time. Another thing I've noticed in my charging adventures, there's always enough space to fit one vehicle at these charging stations, but not enough space if you're pulling a trailer or a boat. Won't fit. Too short. Then what do you do? Nobody seems to talk about that. Comments below. So in 1 week of driving, I've racked up 450 miles, 9.5 hours of driving, and about 7 hours trying to find a charger that works and waiting for it to charge up. So what do I think about this rig? Is there a market for a fully electric F-150? Yes, there's definitely a market for a truck like this. Seems to be selling well. If you're in construction, need lots of power tools to plug in, or you like doing camping and want to light up your tent or tailgate parties or whatever, anything you need electricity and plug-ins, this is definitely worth a look. And if you're towing heavy loads at short distances, this battery has gobs and gobs of torque, more than capable. However, these vehicles are short range only, limited on long range. You're going to be taking lots of journeys out of town, out of state. I think you're better off with a Ford F-150 with a gasoline motor underneath. Yes, there is a market for electric trucks, but if you're living in California and they're trying to make everybody convert from gasoline to totally electric in the next, I don't know, 15, 20 years, it's not going to happen. Trust me. If you do want to go electric, the price is right, and this is definitely a nice truck. All right, starting up, let's take a look at these headlights, and got a lot of lighting up front here. They can definitely see you if you're behind the wheel. And the taillights on the rear. And with the emergency lights on. And the lights on the rear glass light up the bed pretty good. So you see the electric outlets. Emergency on the mirrors, definitely easy to see. And the ones on the front getting drowned out by the headlights. Yeah, turning the headlights off, big improvement. You see these about a mile away. Big improvement on the rear too. And here's what the camera system looks like when you put it in reverse. Let's see what else we have here. Gauge cluster lights up pretty good, very pleasant. We have the low beams on a wall 33 yards away, or at 100 feet. Very bright, height is adequate, just above the bushes. High beams, pretty strong. I think this distance is 35 meters for you metric folks. Alright, down the dark street, low beams. High beams, more than adequate here. Let's get it back in focus. Low beam, high beam. Zone lighting, let's see what that means. Alright. Not doing much of anything. Alright, looks like I turned on a bunch of lights. Let's step outside and see what we got. Okay, the sides lit up. Ooh, got a beam shooting out of the rearview mirror, or side mirror rather. The rear's lit up. So we have the rear lights here. And lights in the side steps. 360-degree lighting. Just have to know where to find the switch. I guess it's a good feature if you're out camping and unloading all your gear. You would think having the headlights on would drain the battery more than driving in the daytime, but I've driven a lot of electric cars and trucks, and driving at night, the headlights don't seem to drain the battery significantly more than having them off in the daytime. Just doesn't seem to matter. If you watch my videos, I cannot stand auto-dimming mirrors. I don't like driving with blacked out mirrors in city traffic. I prefer a disconnect switch. I can't find one on the mirror. Maybe there's one in the program somewhere in the info screen. I can't find it yet. Looks like I'm stuck with auto-dimming mirror for the time being. There's lots and lots of buttons to push on the info screen. It takes a long time to learn everything, so might be in there somewhere. Just don't learn all this in a few days of driving.